Okay, last time we were talking about the problems with Bandura's theory. And one of the problems, although the theory is very, very, as we said, efficient, and it's kind of very nice because you say, well, I can just reinforce one person and and then it'll reinforce everyone else by looking, oh, I see that person's getting $1,000 for doing this behavior, so I'm going to do it too in hopes of getting the $1,000. That person's getting praised, then I'm going to do it too. But the fact is that you never really know. There are some kids who really don't like to be praised in public. They're shy, they're embarrassed, turns them off. So if they know they're going to get praised, they're going to shut down. Okay? There are some people who really don't like recess. So if you give recess for a certain something, they're not going to do it. Right? They may say, I'm going to get it wrong, so we don't go to recess. You never know. You never know. And once again, part of this boils down to problems with philosophy that says my purpose is to control all the children to get them to do what I want to do. Okay? Another problem, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay? When naturally occurring behavior, we started this last time, when naturally occurring behaviors are reinforced, they tend to be extinguished and reinforcement is withdrawn. That is, they stop being natural. Okay? So, for instance, if I say, oh, look, I take a student, I don't know, what's today? Today's a cheat day. Sally comes to pre-care, right? And she's in the 2nd grade. And left to her own devices, she goes in the corner. You can do whatever you want, right? We have different centers. Left to her own devices, she goes and picks up a book and starts to read it, right? I have a bunch of books there for elementary school kids. If I keep saying, oh, look how nice it is, Sally's reading. Oh, here's a reinforcement for Sally. Oh, I know Sally likes Mounds bars. I give her Mounds bars. I give her stars, etc. If I stop doing that, in many instances, she's going to stop reading unless she gets the reinforcements. Now, as you can see here on the screen, Skinner has no reason to reinforce desired behaviors that are already recurring. He would say, what are you doing? Come back to me for a second. He would say, what are you doing? If she's already reading, why are you wasting your time reinforcing that? Get another behavior that you want her to do. But Bandura has a reason for reinforcing naturally occurring behaviors. Why would he keep praising Sally for reading and giving her stars for reading and all that stuff? She's in the class. Ooh, how nice. Here, go ahead.
To reinforce the other students?
Right, for vicarious reinforcement. For vicarious reinforcement. Okay? Look. There's an old story. I'll tell you how this works. There's an old story. I tell this story, and I've had people from around the world telling me it's in stories told in all kinds of cultures, but I'll tell you in an American context, okay? There's a guy who works the graveyard shift. You know the graveyard shift, right? Oh, you work all night. Comes home in the morning, makes himself some food, goes to sleep, right? About 3 or 4 hours after he goes to bed, the kids are out of school. They come in front of his house and they're playing football in the street or they're playing whatever. They're screaming and they're yelling and they're hollering. And he gets, shut up, you kids, I'm trying to sleep. It doesn't work. Finally, one day, gets an idea. He says, aha. Calls the kids over and says, listen, I want you to make noise outside my window every day after school. And every day you make noise, I'm going to give you $1. So the kids come out, they make the noise, and they come afterwards, before it's time to go home for supper, and he gives them $1. This goes on for a week. Next week they come, right? The weekend is out of school. They come after school, they're playing outside. They come and he gives them 50 cents. They say, 50 cents? You promised us $1. He said, well, look, I didn't get overtime last week, and I don't think I'm going to get any more overtime in the job. This is all I can afford. All right, they take the 50 cents. Well, 3 days later he comes and gives them $0.25. Right? You see what's happening, right? $0.25? Started with $1, now it's 50 cents. So, look, I had a rough time. Taxes are due. I can only afford $0.25. Right? Next week comes, gives them $0.05. $0.05, that's all I can afford. My dog, I had to take my dog to the vet. It goes, for $0.05, it's not worth it, and they stop screaming outside the street, right? That's the principle. Okay? Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. But Bandura would say it's a good idea to reinforce Sally for reading because it might vicariously reinforce other people. Right? And by the way, it's a problem. It's a problem. We spend a lot of time praising kids for things they're doing anyway. And all of a sudden, just to do it anyway, they start to expect the praise. Okay? And pretty soon, and this is one of the criticisms of learning theory in general, pretty soon you get to the point where you have kids not ready to do anything unless they get some reward for it. Okay? So let's go to some of Bandura's assumptions. Okay? All right. This is a little bit esoteric for an undergraduate course, but most people will tell you Bandura says that people are active. Come back to me and I'll explain to you why. Bandura is going to tell you, even though he talks about vicarious reinforcement and punishment, etc., but in the end he admits that any reinforcement, let's start again. He admits that any event in the environment that is experienced by the individual, how the individual experiences that event, right, is a function of previous learning. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if someone comes, I'll be personal. If someone comes to me and says, here, I'm going to show you a new art teaching technique, a new technique for art, I cramp up inside because I had very bad experiences with art in elementary school. Boy, you'll be amazed at what you can do to 10-year-olds and 9-year-olds, right? I used to cry when I came home from art class. Thank God my father was an amateur artist. He would just show me how to copy things, right? And I would just do it. I didn't know what I was doing, right? If somebody says to me, oh, boy, look at this neat math trick, right? Because I'm all right at math, but not much better than that. And if it's something cute and slick, I'm not so sure I'm going to get it, right? So my previous experience, and remember he talked about self-efficacy, my previous emotional experiences are going to make a difference, right? Even previous learning. If someone comes to me and says, I'm going to show you a new technique on how to do a bobsled, I don't know anything about bobsled and winter sports, I don't know. Or a new technique on hurling. Anybody know what hurling is? Some game that's very popular, I think, in Ireland and Europe. I don't know. I saw it once on television. I didn't understand it. I don't care, right? So my interests are there, right? So I'm going to bring my own attitudes, my own previous learning, my own ideas, and so are you, right? So are you. To any situation. That's true for you and it's true for the kids. And you have to be careful about that. You have to be very, very careful about that. I'll give you a very good example. I had one student in my class, it was a master's class, her ethnic background is she was Chinese, okay? And she once came to me, and this is a quote so I can say it on tape. She said, I suck at math. That was her quote. She said, but everybody has these preconceived notions that all people from Asian background are wonderful in math. She said, I can't get the help I need. Everybody says, you'll get it. She said, I don't get it. I'm just no good at math. I need a lot of help. So people's preconceived attitudes, bigotries, if you will, prejudices, and we all have them, we all have to try to overcome them, it can make a difference. Remember when I told you about the kid that you'll love and everybody else hates, and the kid that everybody likes and you want, right? That comes from something that you have learned from your experience, says Bandura. So you're active, there's no neutral environmental event. Bandura says, Skinner says, I don't care anything about that. I'll just get the right reinforcements. I'll get you to do what I want. On the other hand, let's go back to the PowerPoint. The reason I have the question marks after it is that it's still stuff that you have learned. When we get to developmental theory, we're going to see people are going to tell you, you have to understand what's inside the person. Okay? Native to the person, if you will. Okay? Once again, he's going to be like Skinner in saying that basically what we are is what we have learned. And people change in the same way, as Skinner said, by reinforcements and punishments. However, there's also vicarious reinforcement and punishment. And of course, in addition to that, there's modeling. The people who were up here who had never played golf who didn't particularly like golf, they were still able to model whatever golf they'd seen on TV enough, or the person who was up here, to at least stand the right way and swing the club more or less okay. Okay? And he's going to tell us we are indeed reinforced by punishments, reinforcements and punishments. However, we are indeed motivated by reinforcements and punishments. However, our internal thoughts, our attitudes make a difference too. I'm not motivated to do this because I've learned I'm no good at this. I am motivated to do this because I think I'm going to get something good out of this. Okay? That kind of thing. So I'm motivated to do this because I know that it'll make me feel good inside that I've achieved something. And of course, there's something else. I'm motivated to do this because I have a value system. Right? Did you ever do anything just because it was the nice thing to do? Help the little old lady across the street? I hope some of you have done that, right? It's just the right thing to do. You stop. One day I'm driving along and I see this guy. He must have been in his 60s. At that time I was much younger. He looked old to me. So I stopped. I had my kids in the car. We got out and he had a truck and all the wood had fallen into the street. And we were going someplace. I said to him, you know what? We're going to have to be a little late. Let's stop and help the guy load the wood. Okay? Now, I admit I was trying to teach them that there are certain obligations you have, but it was, okay? So, and I had as I said, I had my kids with me, but it's important to, so those motivations come to, and some things we think are good things, some things we think are bad things, and we may disagree on that. Okay? So those things motivate us, our values and our systems. Okay? And Bandura still tells us that behavior is very important. He emphasizes modifying behavior. He wrote a book called Behavior Modification, although it came early in his career. And he emphasizes evaluating students in terms of identifiable behaviors. However, he thinks thinking is also very important, and emotions. Okay, your self-efficacy, what you think about your ability to do something, your memories of past experiences are a crucial component of the behaviors you'll display, your evaluation of a given individual or a given person, et cetera, right? And this happens a lot. This happens a lot. And let me just, okay, I have to give this lecture somewhere. I used to give it with Kohlberg, but I'll give it now. One of the problems that I have with multiculturalism, the way it is put forth, it's only one of them, I have several problems, is that it tends to think of people in terms of stereotypes. Okay? These people are this way, those people are that way. They have their culture, and that influences who they are and how they think and what they do and what they're about. And this creeps into a lot of things we do. And I'll give you an example. My son goes to the mall one day. I didn't like it, but I would say lied to me, but he winds up in the mall. And there is some kid who happened to be black who's being picked on by other kids. So it started to be a fight, and my son went in to help this kid, right, the other kid. I was very proud of him that he was opposed to bigotry. I wasn't too happy that he got into this fight. But anyway, he came home. He said, the two of us beat the hell out of those three guys. It was 3-2, right? And he and this other kid, Stephen, became good buddies for a long time. Okay? So, okay, it wasn't so easy. Stephen's parents had to come over and check me out. Right? Stephen was an honor student. They wanted to be sure he wasn't getting involved with the dope, right? My son was stupid. He and Stephen became friends for a long time. And Stephen was very tall. I think this happened when he was in middle school already. And they were friends for several years. Good. I don't know what happened. Stephen, one day they just sort of drifted apart. But they were friends for a long time and go over each other's house. And Stephen was quite tall. He was already almost 6 foot. He was 6 foot. I remember he was as tall as I was or taller when they were in middle school. And they used to go out in the yard and play basketball. My son was a good basketball player, right? He still is, he tells me, but, right? A good basketball player. And so they'd play one-on-one, and Stephen would kill him. I mean, he would kill Stephen. 10-4, 10-3. Stephen was all right, but my son was really good. No, I don't want to say anything, but he holds a school record for the most points scored in a game in his private school. I admit it wasn't one of the big schools, but he was a good. So they would go to the Jewish Community Center after school. He and Stephen would go there, and and they would play, and they'd play one-on-one. And the way you'd play one-on-one was that you would, you play till 5 points. The loser would have to sit down. The winner would take the next person. My son came back to me and said, "Dad, I don't get it." He said, "People who give me a hard game lose to Stephen." He said, "They're much better than he is. I'm a better, And he would kill Stephen. Stephen was average. These guys were good, right? He was one of the best there. He said, I don't understand it. He said, why is it that And finally he comes to me one day and said, "Dad, I think I know what it is. He's tall and he's black and everybody expects that he's a great basketball player." Right? Stephen used to laugh about it because he wasn't. But, so even our performance can be influenced by stereotypes, in this case, silly stereotypes, right? And your attitude toward people can be influenced by stereotypes. And you have to watch it. You have to watch it. You have to judge each person as an individual, okay? That's not to say you have to say, oh, well, you have a religious holiday or you have an ethnic festival, I don't care about it. No, that's okay. But people are individuals. And in fact, when it comes to almost every personality trait, you will find as greater differences within any different group than you will find across groups. Or in other words, the best black basketball player and the worst black basketball player, there's a bigger difference between them than between the average of blacks in any other ethnic group. Do you understand what I'm saying? People need to be judged as individuals. And you have to watch, not letting your preconceived notions and attitudes influence how you think about people and what happens to people. Okay? And there's a lot of research that shows that preconceptions have a powerful, powerful influence on how we act toward people, how we interact with people, what we think about people. And you have to try hard to get rid of them. Sometimes you luck into it. When I first got here, many, many, many years ago, there was someone else on the faculty. Talk like this. From Kentucky. And when you say to him, what do you want to do this weekend? Well, I'm going to take my dogs. There was a big W in dog. I can't really do it. Take my dogs and we're going hunting. And then he would participate. His life was around bass fishing tournaments. I mean, a real stereotype, right? And he grew up in the hills of Kentucky. One day, he was supposed to be an expert in a certain field, and I was writing a paper on it. And I gave it to him to review. What a mind. What insights. What things I had missed that he picked up on. I mean, the guy was very, very smart. So he had an accent, and he liked to hunt and fish. So what does that have to do with anything? He wasn't the Beverly Hillbillies, right? He was one smart cookie. You have to be very careful about those things and about prejudice about things and assuming things about people. All right. I'll say that some more, so let's go on. Okay? Let's go back to PowerPoint. Unlike behaviorists, Bandura puts a great deal of emphasis on emotions. And this is clearly seen the importance he places on self-efficacy as a fundamental determinant of learning. And there are other social learning theorists who have done even more so. Okay? I just want to go into this briefly, this locus of control. Okay? To show you this. Come back to me. Once Bandura did this, he talked about, Bandura talked about how internal attitudes can influence. There were other people, I won't say that it's because of what Bandura did, but it's the same type as Bandura. And social learning theorists began to understand how powerful attitudes towards performance were in shaping performance. Okay? And there's something called an internal versus an external locus of control. Where's the pen here? I'm missing the pen for the... Hello. Can somebody help me back there? I'm missing the pen to write on the tablet. Here comes the expert. Okay. An internal locus of control...
On the side of the machine.
It's not, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay? Okay, here, let's go to this tablet. We have an internal. See, the last person put it away. I never do, so it's sitting out there. Versus an external locus of, versus an external locus of control. A person who has an internal locus of control feels that it has control over outcomes. Okay? In other words, if I study, I'll get a good grade. Right? Let's put personal control over outcomes. My own behavior influences what happens. A person with an external locus of control says no. Either it's due to dumb luck or it's due to powerful others. Okay? A person who has an external locus of control feels it doesn't matter what I do. Either it's luck or somebody liked me or didn't like me, and that's what happened. My own behavior has a little influence, little if any influence on outcomes. Can you read that? Has little if any influence on outcomes. Okay? So in other words, okay, and I've seen this. Come back to me. I worked in a clinic for a long time with kids who had troubles. We were doing, I can't remember what it was. I think it was math. We're studying and studying and studying and studying and studying and studying. And the kid said, I'm no good at this, I'm no good at this. Finally goes in and he gets an 87, I think it was. It was a pretty good grade for somebody who had been flunking all this math. He said, nah, it was just luck. The teacher just asked the stuff I knew. Had nothing to do with me. Okay? Or sometimes it's, the teacher likes me, so she passed me. One time I'm playing for my summer camp baseball team. And they had 8 guys who could play baseball. We used to play the other summer camps in the area. And then there were 3 of us who wanted to play. I wasn't too good. So, of course, put those people in right field since not too many balls go there. So the coach says, okay, Lehman, you get out and try. So there was a rule that if you hit the ball into the woods, it's a home run. I'm going to stand up now. Okay? So I get up there, and he hits the ball toward me. Okay? He hits the ball toward me. And I see the ball, and I loosen the sound. I couldn't even see the thing. I'm going back. I'm 2 steps into the woods, and I hear plop. It hit into my glove. Guys, okay, Lieberman, you're the right fielder. I made the team. I had a very external locus of control about how good I was in baseball. If anything was going to happen, it's just dumb luck. Just dumb luck. Right? So, right? And I never could be convinced. And I got a nice hit during that game. Luck. Okay? Or let's go back to the tablet. Powerful others. Okay? The teacher likes me. The person in control determines what's going to happen. Sometimes we can have that for failure too. It wasn't my performance that made a mess. That person was out to get me. That's why I didn't get the raise, or that's why I didn't get a good grade. Okay? Now people, when this concept first came out, come back to me now, this locus of control. Do you feel that the control, in other words, the locus, the place of the control is inside you, internal, outside the environment? It was seen as a general personality characteristic. But very soon we saw that it wasn't so, that it could be so for instance, when people can have a very internal locus of control when it comes to sports. If I practice, I'll get better. And external with academics, I just can't do this stuff. If I pass, it's just luck. Interesting enough, just as a side point, they found out that the people who tend to be the most successful are internal for success and external for failure. If I succeed, it's because I did it. If I fail, it's because there's some temporary glitch in the environment that screwed me up. I'm using those words for a reason. but I can really do it. One time I was working with somebody in this clinic, and he had troubles in English. I'm working with English, but his math was great. So he had this big test. I said, you want to do a little math? No, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. Gets an 84 in math. He had all 90s before. I said, I told you you had to study. He said, oh, no. Oh, no. He said, I knew that stuff. The teacher was out to screw me. Okay? That's a quote, so I can say it, right? So he was excellent. I'm good at it. But in the end, he studied after that. But once you get people feeling that their efforts make no difference, which is very similar to Bandura's self-efficacy, right? You have troubles. As a matter of fact, let's go briefly back to this, to the PowerPoint. There's a term that was identified called learned helplessness. Learned helplessness works like this. Here's what they did. Come back to me. No, they took a dog. This is the classic one. They took a dog and they put it in a cage. I know you don't like to hear this. They put it in a cage and the floor was slightly electrified. A little bit of an electric current. I know, just a little bit. I don't know if you could do it these days, but they did. And there was a lever that you could push, and when you hit the lever, the electricity went off. So the dog would run around the cage, and by accident hit the lever, electricity went off. They let the dog rest a little, they put the electricity, the dog would run around, the lever hit, electricity went off. Before you know it, the dog was knocking into the lever all the time. Interestingly enough, because it's an animal without reasoning to speak, if the dog hit the lever with its nose first, it would always hit it with the nose. If the dog went in on the side, it would always go in on the side, backing on the side. Okay? So pretty soon you have the lever, you think, oh, the dog wasn't suffering. Electricity goes on, bang, the dog hit the lever. Electricity goes on, bang, the dog would hit the lever. Then they turned the electricity off. They turned the knob off that connected the lever to the electric current. Electric current would go on, the dog would hit the lever, wouldn't go off. Hit it again, wouldn't go off, wouldn't go off, wouldn't go off, wouldn't go off, right? Over and over again, the lever would, you got the picture in the wrong place. Over and over, the lever would not work. Okay, finally, they reconnected the lever. Okay, if they did it enough, they would reconnect the lever, and the dog wouldn't do anything. So they would take the dog and push the dog into the lever, and push the dog into the lever. And the electricity would go off. If the dog had hit the lever with its head, they would take the dog's head and gently put it into the lever. It would go up and over and over and over and over, trying to quote unquote show the dog that the lever was reconnected. Didn't work. Once the dog had learned that what I'm doing makes no difference, the dog gave up. There was one time after they had done, I don't remember how many times, they turned it on again, left the dog alone, and it lay down on the cage. Just lay down on the floor. So instead of electricity going through its feet, it went through its whole body. Just gave up. Just gave up. So, and that's what can happen to you. I don't know how many times I have heard teachers say, if she only would try, she could do it. But she's not going to try because she's convinced she can't do it. I know she can do it. You even see people doing things and they'll tell you can't do it. The person is sitting there sounding out words and says, I hate phonics, I can't do them. I've seen that myself. Okay? So, from Bandura we get the lesson, that I'm having trouble here. Okay, wait a minute. From Bandura we get the lesson that while we're still talking about learning, emotions count too. I'm not looking because I'm playing. Okay. Now, there's another theory that is pretty much a social learning theory that we probably ought to look into because it's a theory that has come into the schools and some of the terminology. This theory, let's go to the PowerPoint, is the theory of Lev Vygotsky, who was a Soviet psychologist who died very young in the 1920s or 1930s, I believe he died. People often say, gee, I wonder what would have happened if he had lived longer, because he did a lot of stuff on language. And the answer is, I don't know, Stalin probably would have murdered him, so it doesn't make any difference anyway. But Vygotsky started out with a theory of language, okay? And for Vygotsky, learning language facilitates development. It allows children to receive ideas, culture, and thinking from those around them, okay? Vygotsky believed that learning language could enhance thinking and that thinking reflects language. Okay, come back to me for a second. I'll show you how this works. Vygotsky did a lot of work on language and the nature of language that's beyond the scope of this course. But basically what he said is that language abilities develop and cognitive abilities develop. And very early in life, they intertwine. Okay? They intertwine. Okay? And we begin thinking in language. When most of you have a problem to think about, you're thinking about it in a language, right? It's not abstract. What should I do here? How do I do? Wait, carry the 4, take the 4 and 62. Right? That's what you're doing. You're thinking about it in language. So Vygotsky said, it started out as a theory of language, but he said the key here is to understand how, and of course what this led him to believe, by believing that improving your language can improve your thinking, is that by learning things from the environment, such as language, it can improve the way we think and understand. Okay? It was really a social learning theorist. When you read Vygotsky, I had one student who said, it looks like he stole it all from Bandura, except he died before Bandura was born. Okay, so it's not or about the same time. So it's obviously didn't take it from Bandura. Bandura, right? And by the way, Bandura didn't take it from him either, because Vygotsky wrote in Russian and it wasn't translated for a long time. So basically, let's go back to the PowerPoint, okay? Basically what he's saying is that you can improve language by improving thinking, but you can improve thinking by improving language. And he and Piaget had arguments over language. As I say, he died young. Piaget vociferously disagrees. He thinks that everything you do, you're thinking about everything, including your language, reflects your underlying thinking. So the way you think is going to reflect the way you construct and use language. I happen to agree with Piaget, but that's I'm going to try to give a fair presentation of Vygotsky. So what Vygotsky took, the most important thing for us to remember about Vygotsky is that he's going to talk about the fact that learning from the environment can improve your knowledge and improve your thinking. And he talked about the zone of proximal development. Has anyone heard this term? You've heard this term? Who's heard this term? Raise your hand. Where'd you hear it? Where'd you hear it? Push it down, push it down, push it down. You don't?
I heard in science also.
In a science class? Where did you hear?
Microbiology.
In a psychology class?
Microbiology.
Microbiology. No kidding. Where do you hear it?
Either psychology or sociology.
Psychology. Did anybody hear it in another education class? Yeah? Okay. This zone of proximal development, it says, it's the level of achievement that includes tasks that the child cannot accomplish alone, but can achieve when assisted by a competent adult or peer. So let me show you the zone, right? Here, let's go to this. Okay, here's the kid's zone of proximal development, often called the ZPD, if you're in the know. This is, down here is the stuff the kid can learn and knows without any help. Well, there's no point in worrying about that. Kid already knows it. Up here is the stuff, I'm going to draw a smaller zone. Wait a second. I'm going to draw a smaller zone. Let me get rid of this zone. Okay, here's the zone of proximal development. Up here is what the kid cannot learn by herself. Today's a she day, right? Yeah, by herself or with the help of others. Okay? There's no point in doing this because the kid knows it already. There's no point in doing this because the kid can't learn it. But so what you have to do is do something that's in the zone, something that the child cannot achieve on her own or his own, but that can be learned, by help from the teacher or from peers. And of course, the principle is once it's learned, the zone moves up here, right? The zone moves up. Okay? So now, this that you couldn't learn before with the help of others, now you can, because it required the necessary pre-knowledge. Now this task that you didn't have enough knowledge to do and that you couldn't accomplish even with the help of others, now you can accomplish with the help of others. This is the zone. Okay? So here, let's go back to the PowerPoint. So tasks below the zone, the child can accomplish with no help. So giving the child this kind of task involves no new learning or a waste of time teaching. Well, forget it. Tasks above the zone can't be accomplished without help. Thus, giving the child this kind of task causes frustration and failure and results in no meaningful learning. Okay? Therefore, ooh, there's a nice effect. Ooh. The job of the teacher is to provide activities within the zone of proximal development. Okay, so let me show you how you do this. I'm going to show you how you do this. Let's go to, here's how you get the zone. Tell me your name.
Shiva.
Shiva. Raise your hand. Wave to the crowd, Shiva. Okay, here's what you do. Shiva, hold up your hand. No, in front of me. See, you take the pinky of the right hand, you pull it, you tap twice on the left shoulder, and you go boop, and up pops the zone. You know, it's easy to say that, find the zone, but what is it? You know, how do you know, right? I mean, I was trying to be silly. Did it work? Okay. How do you know? That becomes the question. I can give a task, think I'm helping the kid do it, and all the time the kid could have done it on her own. But this I'll tell you. If you're doing a task, Vygotsky is one of the first ones to tell you, if you're doing a task and the kid is working with you and the kid can't get it, stop it. It's above the zone. Stop doing it. He's not the first one to tell us. Skinner told us the same thing, and by Bandura too. If the kid's not learning, stop doing it. Everyone is going to tell you that. We have the opposite idea. Oh, the kid can't do it. Do it again. 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 Okay? Now, these people are going to tell you now. So it's hard to know, but it's very interesting. For the first time, we have now someone who's warning us about doing stuff that's too easy. Okay? There's a theory that it's not on the called achievement motivation. Achievement motivation works like this. Okay? I'm going to make a task. Okay? See there? Here's a basket. The question is, achievement motivation says people with high achievement motivation have a motivation to achieve a lot. They want to achieve a lot. They want to get better. So let's say this is the spot from which I can flick a penny into the garbage can every time. Okay? And I have very high achievement motivation. Where am I going to, and you can say, okay, you can stand wherever you want. I have motivation to achieve, to get better at this task. Where am I going to stand? Probably. What? Say it again. Push it, push it, push it.
Farther back.
How much farther?
A little bit. So you
yeah,
can
a little bit. That's exactly right. I'll take a step back because I could do it from here, so I'll take a step back. Okay? And try to picture it until I get better, until I can do it almost always from here. Then I'll take another step back. People with low achievement motivation, where do they stand? Push it down, push it down. She's on a streak.
right next to it.
Either here or, okay, can the camera go this far? Over here. You can't even get it right. You can't even get me and the garbage can in there, a million miles away. This one's perfect. Standing way over here is perfect. Why? Because, why? Go ahead.
You'll never get it.
I'll never get it, but, so why is it low achievement motivation? What's my out over here? If I'm standing right over here, what do people say? Go ahead.
No one expects you to get it.
No one can get it from here. And if I do luck in once and get it in, everybody goes, woo, look at that shot. Wow. Okay? Now, interestingly enough, this works backwards too. If you want to get kids who have trouble, right? If you stand them here, below their zone of proximal development, where they can do it already, they don't like it. So if you go with a fifth grader, right? And the fifth grader, you say, how much is one? You give the fifth grader a worksheet. You say, well, how much is 1 and 1? How much is 2 minus 1? How much is 3 take away 2? Johnny has $1 and his mother gave him another $1. How much money does he have? Sally has $3 and then she spent $1. How much money does she have? You start on that. It's a 5th grader. Oh, look, you got 100 on the test. The kid knows that she's standing here and all the other 5th graders are standing here. That doesn't help. She's going to say, you think I'm stupid. You often hear them say, this is baby stuff. Those of you who want to teach in middle school, you'll hear that all the time. This is baby stuff, right? On the other hand, if the kid really belongs here, and all the other kids are here, and all the other kids, let's say, are here, and the kid belongs here, and you say, well, let me put the kid here, which is still behind where the other kids are standing. If it's too hard, it's very frustrating. So Vygotsky, and again, they learn, I can't do it. So Vygotsky is the one who told us, look, you've got to look for the place where you can get true achievement, okay? This zone of proximal development, okay? And you'll notice, by the way, that, let's go back to the PowerPoint, that he talked about peers also. Vygotsky was very, very hot. The educators who employ Vygotsky's theory are very, very hot on kids working in groups and working with peers, peer tutoring, cooperative learning, people who can help. Okay? There's a real sense that that's an important thing to do. Okay? And by the way, if you're in class, you can do that, that's okay, but you've got to be sure that that's working too. You've got to be sure that that's working. Okay? A lot of very successful educational theories throughout history have worked that way. Okay? Kids working together in groups, okay, where the more advanced students are helping the younger students. Indeed, the American one-room school system often worked that way. You're right, you're in a school out in the country, and you got 20, 30 kids there, and they're from all over, and that's 30 kids in the whole school from the various farms around, or 50 even. And you have 30 kids, you have 2 kids who will be in the 5th grade and 5 in the 3rd. It just doesn't work that way. They work together, and the younger kids would help the older kids. The older kids would help the younger kids. The older kids would help the younger kids. Okay? And a lot of successful systems I even saw a system where they were trying to teach, teaching Hebrew as a foreign language. And I'll be darned if some of the older kids, the adults certainly didn't mind learning from kids who were younger because they just happened to know it better, right? Because they'd had better background initially. College students had no problem learning from, 9 and 10-year-olds. Okay? Not everything, obviously, the grammar, etc., but the spoken, and somebody once told me to tell the similar thing in teaching Spanish. So peers are important, or not just the teacher, but whoever is in the room. Okay? Here, let's go here. Okay. Now, Vygotsky talks about various ways in which we can achieve this learning of what's right above the zone. And, of course, once you learn it, you bring it into the zone, what you know. Okay. Students receive help that enables them to complete tasks they cannot complete independently. He calls that scaffolding. Okay? And scaffolding is provided by knowledgeable others, as we talked about, the teacher or the students in the classroom. And Vygotsky is a proponent of cooperative learning, or Vygotskyan educators. Kids learning together and working together. And by the way, let me say one other thing I forgot. If you have a comprehensive project, you can have kids helping. For instance, this one is a good writer. Okay? That one is a good researcher. Let them work together and show each other. This one is good at art. Okay? And you have an artistic presentation as part of the presentation, charts and graphs. Okay? And so you need to tell them, look, you help him write, you help her do the graphs, right, et cetera, et cetera. Right? I was pretty good in science, but drawing graphs used to drive me out of my brains, right? I was just not very good in art. So those are the kinds of things you can do. Okay, and Vygotsky talks about examples of scaffolding. What are types of scaffolding? One is modeling. Sound familiar? Right? So in other words, I'm going to model for you, and then you'll be able to do what I did. Thinking aloud. He's very big on language. Well, if I do this and then I do this, like first I'm going to draw Here, I'll give you one that I use a lot, okay? When I'm teaching kids how to add 1/3 plus 1/5. I say to the kids, okay, the first thing you do is first thing I do is draw equal signs. Then I put the fraction line here and the fraction line here. Then I multiply these two together and get the number on the bottom. Okay? Then I say, I'm going to take, okay, then I say, okay, I'm going to take the number on the bottom here and move it up here, and the number on the bottom here and move it down here, and multiply. 5/15, 3/15, is that right? 8/15. Okay, so that kind of thing. Now, obviously, I don't do it all at once, but step by step, thinking aloud, saying it aloud, modeling it. When you go, if you're going to go to the board, come back to me for a second. If you're going to go to the board, Vygotsky's going to tell you if you're doing something, talk about it. It's a good idea, can't hurt. It's a good idea. See, I'm doing this, then I'm doing this, then I'm doing that. If you're going to show a kid something, talk about it. You go to the kid's desk. See, first I do this, then I draw the line like this, and I try to keep this line smaller than this line. Or I put my equal signs first, put the equal signs in and draw my fraction lines first. Talk about it. Talk about it. Okay? Don't just show. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Asking questions. Okay? Asking questions is a very powerful educational tool. Okay? There are many, many educational theories that will tell you the most important thing to do is to ask kids the proper question. Come back to me. The great educator that we have in the Western tradition who talked about this, put the camera back on me if you can, was Socrates. Socrates, the Socratic method comes from asking questions. If this is true, then what? And there's one of his, I can't remember the name of it, the Meno, I can't remember. There's one of his dialogues in which he teaches a slave boy the Pythagorean theorem by asking a question. Well, if I do this, then what about this? The slave boy gives an answer. Who's illiterate? Then if I do this, what about this? If I do this, what about this? And he keeps giving the answers. Okay? So by asking questions, he gets the right answers. And often, by the way, because Vygotsky was interested in thinking, you can get kids to think by asking the right questions. I'll give you one that got me. My high school history teacher asked me, she was a great teacher, why weren't there slaves in the North? So then, of course, we talked about principles and abolition and this and that. And she said, well, there were slaves in New York if you look, then she brought facts about slaves in the colonies and the states at the early part of the country. There were lots of slaves in the North. New York had slaves. Why weren't there slaves? And then she just left us alone. We had to go look. Does anybody know one reason not to have slaves in the North, especially there were slaves in New York City for quite a while, as a matter of fact. But why wouldn't you have slaves on a farm in Massachusetts? Anybody think about it? It's a good question, isn't it? Why wouldn't you have slaves on a farm in Pennsylvania? Or in Minnesota? Maybe that'll make it easier. Say it again?
Too cold.
It's cold, so what? It's cold for everybody.
There aren't farms. There's
What?
not going to be big harvests, so there's not a need for them.
Yeah. No, there's 5 months of the year. What are you going to do? You got to feed. You got to feed slaves. You got to house slaves. They cost money. And you're sitting around watching the snow. It just wasn't economically feasible. Okay, that's one of the reasons. There were plenty of moral objections to slavery in the North and in the South. Okay? Or you can bring across not only asking questions, but bringing across facts that seem to contradict something. The Secretary of State of the Confederacy in 1863 suggested freeing the slaves on the condition that they would fight in the Confederate Army. 1864 was suggested again by, I can't remember who. That was a constant suggestion throughout the life of the Confederacy, to free the slaves so they could fight for the Confederacy. Well, what does that say about the reasons people were in the Clearly there were people who were for the Confederacy for reasons other than the slaves, etc. So doing that, causing things that cause people to think, is important. I don't want to go beyond that because it's rough. I mean, there were obviously other reasons for the Confederacy other than supporting slavery. On the other hand, the vast majority of people said, forget it, okay, as you may well know. So these are the kinds of things, I keep bringing up Civil War examples, obviously because I used to be a history teacher. But those are kinds of things that you can ask yourself. You want another one, global warming. We have had vast periods of global warming and cooling on the Earth before there was ever people on the Earth even. Before there was an industrial complex. Are you really sure that this warming now is due to what people are doing, or is it just a natural climatic change that happened? There were glaciers. There were glaciers in the northern part of the United States. Okay? The configuration of the Great Lakes was changed by glaciers. It's just a question I'm asking. Okay? Yeah, go ahead.
I have an answer.
Go ahead.
The Indian shelf crashed into the induction zone, and the mountain ranges, the layers and layers of limestone vaporized when they were heated in the induction zone, releasing millions of tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
Okay, so but we've had several ice ages. We've had about 3 ice ages, I believe, in the history of the Earth, from what they can tell from the rocks. Okay. I mean, it may be right. The thing I showed you about the Earth couldn't possibly be moving, that I got from a teacher who said, here, I'm just going to ask you a question. Okay? There are answers to this. Okay? But asking questions is a good way to teach. Okay? And it's a good way to get people to educate. One of the problems with our education system today, I feel, is that people are concentrated on the right answer. What's the right answer? Sometimes what the test says is the right answer isn't necessarily the right answer. People disagree about it. You take that national teaching exam, many of the questions on there, you're supposed to know the philosophy of the person making up the exam. There are a lot of people who disagree, right? Rather than encouraging thinking. As a matter of fact, my son went to a school where the teacher, you get 1 point for the right answer and 2 points for asking a good question. Okay? So asking questions is an important part also of, what do you think? What do you know about this? How are you sure? And interesting enough, textbooks present things as the truth that people disagree about. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, cueing, mnemonic devices. This is the only word in English that starts with M in it. It's devices that help you remember. We'll get to that when we get to information processing. That's another way to help people remember. Don't worry about this. We'll get to this. It's what they call strategies for remembering. We're going to do this intensively in just next. Does some of this stuff sound familiar? You can see that the modeling in particular and later the information processing are going to talk about these two things. They're going to call these strategies rather than cueing and modeling. But as I said, Vygotsky came before all those theories. Okay. I'm not going to go into these questions with Vygotsky because he doesn't talk about them too much, and he wasn't too interested in education, and they're pretty much the same as with social learning theory. Okay, now, let's get off this and come back to me. Okay? I'll tell you what. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. We might as well do this. Okay, Vygotsky is going to tell you that individual goals, that what you should try to do is get goals for learning within the zone of proximal development. If you say ZPD instead of zonal proximal development, everybody will say, woo, that person's a real expert. Okay? Okay, and he's going to talk about scaffolding techniques, which again, if you look at Bandura and later information processing is pretty much covered, that are the methodologies that we should use for calling this, okay? And the purpose of education for Vygotsky is going to be, come back to me for a second, again, is learning. Teaching kids learning. Vygotsky talks about a lot about something called social transmission. Learning the values of the culture and learning what other people think and the values of the school by learning from the teacher and from one's peers. Okay? And once again, he's going to say, here, let's just go back here for 1 second. I didn't write it in because I've been piddling with this. But achievement is learning. The factors that contribute to achievement are getting the proper goals within the zone and using proper techniques. And lack of achievement that may cause the kid to be labeled, again, is picking the wrong goal. It's your fault. Or not giving the kids the tools, the modeling, the cueing, the other things to learn. Okay? Okay, come back to me now. Now, we're going to start now on information processing. As you can see, I didn't spend a lot of time on Vygotsky because he really is a social learning theorist. But I want to go to the next theory. What? Say it again?
I was curious about how you distinguish if we were to... I'm just curious on Vygotsky and Bandura, exactly what the distinguishing differences are.
Well, look, I'm going to tell you the honest truth, okay? A few years ago, I used to teach this course without Vygotsky. But since many people are taking this course are going to be teachers, Vygotsky's going to be on whatever exam you're taking. Right now, it's the Texas exam. The title might change by the time the tape is a couple years old. And Vygotsky's going to be on there, and they're going to talk about the zone of proximal development. Okay, he really is very much a social learning theorist. As I said, he died very young, so he really didn't get a chance to develop his ideas the way Bandura did. However, one of the unique contributions of Vygotsky, from my point of view, is a reminder to stay away from stuff that's too easy. Okay, Skinner has no problem with that. If it's too easy, fine, we'll just go to the next step, and the next step, and the next step. For Vygotsky, it's quite the opposite. Vygotsky wants very much, right, to be sure that you stay away from things that are too easy. And I'm telling you, if you do things that are too easy, then you're going to find that kids are going to start to rebel against it. Particularly, kids are either going to say they're bored, or kids who are low achievers are going to think you think I'm stupid. So you have to be careful. But you have to remember that term, zone of proximal development, and remember the term scaffolding. And scaffolding is simply techniques. You know what a scaffold is? It's a thing outside the building you can climb up. Sorry for ending that sentence with a preposition, but I'm not changing it. Okay? So that this is a way to move up in your learning. He's a learning theorist. Now we're going to go to one more theory. It's going to talk about learning. It is the theory that has overwhelmed education today. Let's go briefly to the PowerPoint. It's called information processing theory. Okay, come back to me now. Information processing theory, if it is a theory, not everybody agrees that it is, has overwhelmed education today. Okay? Most of the lingo, the jargon that you are going to hear in the school has information processing backgrounds. You'll hear zone of proximal development, and you'll hear social learning, and you'll hear modeling a lot. Okay, so you'll hear that, but you'll hear things like, the child couldn't process the information. You mean you couldn't learn it? Is that what you're saying? Excuse me. You mean she couldn't learn it? The child couldn't encode the information. Not that the child couldn't. In other words, the kid couldn't learn it, couldn't figure it out. You never say, "Oh, the kid forgot." The child failed to retrieve the information. If a kid is having trouble doing something, we never say the kid doesn't understand. We say the kid has trouble with processing the problem. The child has an audio processing problem, a visual processing problem. This jargon has overwhelmed education. And information processing basically is a response, also a response to Skinner, the way Bandura's theory was. Skinner said, hey, look, you can't get into people's heads and look what's going on in there, so forget about it. Again, not a very good contention. Can't get into people's heads, see a depression, so forget about depression. You can't get into people's heads and see a thinking, so forget about thinking. I mean, it's just not very scientific. Scientists use these abstract ideas to explain observations. But information problems people said, well, if we can't get into people's heads, maybe we can have a model for how people think. And that model is a computer. Now, if I were to say that there were an information processing person in the room, person would pick up this computer, pick it up and smash me over the head 6 times. No, 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 the computer is not our model. But it is. Okay? There are things that are not quite computer-like, like being self-regulation, knowledge of your own thoughts, but by and large, it's pretty much based on the computer. Okay, let's go back to PowerPoint. Information processing talks about information stores, cognitive processes, and metacognition. Here, that's the whole theory. Let's go to the next one, okay? You have to do these one at a time. Okay, and this metacognition is the part of the theory that does not really have a computer as a model, but the rest does. Okay, information processing talks about memory stores, types of memories, memory sites, places, repository, places where data are stored and held for information. Okay? And it talks about 3 kinds of data stores: sensory memory, working memory, or used to be called short-term memory. Now it's usually called working memory, working or short-term memory, either term, and then long-term memory. Okay? You've all heard these terms, haven't you? Applied to humans. Who's heard these terms? Long-term memory, short-term memory, etc., etc. So let's talk about these one at a time. Sensory memory. Okay. Sensory memory is the stuff that, information, it's the store that briefly holds environmental stimuli until they can be further processed. Okay? It takes in all the raw data, everything that you experience that comes in from the environment. Okay, even if you're not consciously aware of it. Come back to me for a second. I'll give you an example of sensory memory. Okay, I want you to now pay attention to the feel of your shirt or your sweater, whatever you're wearing, on your shoulders. Can you do it? Okay. Pay attention to your foot on the floor if you're watching. Okay? Now, people are looking at me. Those of you who are looking at the screen. Now, keep looking at me and pay attention to the lights on the ceiling, or if you're at home, to a light that's to the side of you or on the ceiling. You can do it, right, with your peripheral vision, unless you have visual problems. Okay? But you weren't paying attention to that stuff before. But it's all coming in. It's all coming as sensory memory. And, of course, we have our 5 senses. Who wants to tell me what they are? I'll give you one. Seeing. Now I'm out. What else?
Touching.
What? Push it down. Go ahead.
Touching.
Touching.
Tasting.
Tasting.
Smelling.
Smelling.
Hearing.
And hearing, right? That's it. Okay, that's how we take in information. Well, computers take in information too. They have quote-unquote senses. How do computers take in information? How do you, what?
We put it in.
We put it in how? We don't have to put it in. How? Go ahead.
Modem.
A modem.
Keyboard.
What? A keyboard.
Mouse.
A mouse. Say it again.
Disk drive, you can download stuff.
Yeah, download something. A disk. A scanner. Some computers can do it. You know, you can have a computer that adjusts. We don't have to do it. Set it up and say when the temperature gets above, you know, when the temperature gets above 78, cool it down. When it gets below 68, warm it up. Right? It just has a sensor to sense the heat in the room. Okay? Is your thermostat a mini computer? I guess. Okay. So that's the raw data. That raw data is then passed on to, let's go here, your working memory or short-term memory. I learned this stuff a long time ago, so I'll tend to call it short-term memory, but it's working memory too. It's information that it's the information that stores, that retains the information with which the person is consciously working. Okay? It contains what you're thinking about, or it's what's on the screen, or in the ROM, doop-de-doop-doop. Here, look. If you're going to come back to me. If you're going to take a computer and you're going to write a letter, you just turn on the computer and start writing the letter? What do you have to do to write a letter?
Open a
So you
program.
just turn on the computer and you start typing, right? I don't think so. What do you have to do?
Access another program.
You have to get a word processing program, right? So you have to call up a program. And that's in the what? The RAM, the ROM, the room-de-doom. What's it in? Give me a word here. Who knows?
ROM.
Hard drive.
The ROM? Thank you very much. The ROM? It's on the ROM. Okay. It's on the hard drive, but you have to call it up, right? Out of the hard drive, which is the long-term memory. So if I tell you the problem I gave you, add a third and a fifth, first you have to call up your program for adding fractions. Then you have to call up the subprogram for adding fractions with unlike denominators. And then you can add a third and a fifth. Right? Here. Let's go to the board. Yeah. There it is. See? So that's what they're going to tell you. Okay? They're going to tell you. They're going to call those programs or schemes for doing that. So it's what's in your ROM and what's on the screen. That's what you're thinking about. The program you've called up and what you're thinking about. Okay, of course, computers tend not to daydream the way we're almost done here. Half the people here are doing, or people out there. See, out there, you don't have to daydream. Just turn off the switch when you can't stand it anymore and turn it on again. Okay. Now, working memory, let's go back here. I'm going to call it working memory because that's the modern term. It's a limited capacity. And you can remember 7 items of information plus or minus 2. And for kids, it's less. Okay? Okay, come back to me. One of the things that information processing did, that idea about working memory and how many items you could remember and how to remember more, okay? How to remember more, that stuff was done by somebody named Miller in the 1950s. A lot of the things we have known about how to remember things, okay, has been going on for a long time. The first person actually to talk about how to remember something was Aristotle, that we have in literature anyway. He said, it's the old one to repeat, you know, 7 times 7 is 46, 7 times 7 is 46, is that right? 7 times 7, how much? 7 times 7 is 40, I said, whatever it is, who knows? I have a calculator, I don't have to remember that stupid stuff. Okay, whatever it is. By the way, that's not the world's best strategy if you do it too much, but we'll get to that. So there's a lot of stuff that people have known. People have known about what I call mnemonic devices. I did that on purpose. Tricks for remembering for a long time. And they took it and put it into a comprehensive framework, which is a contribution. Let me say, by the way, just as a little hint now, you can notice that already, for them, knowing is remembering. It's memories. Okay, I'll say it again. A lot of people aren't going to agree with that. Okay, so the trouble, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Working memory has a problem. It's limited in duration, okay? And the period of time you can keep something in conscious memory is limited, okay? Right, the stuff you're thinking about, if you hear, right now, if I were to have you go out here and say, I'll pay $1 million, you can tell me 20% of what Lieberman said, most of you wouldn't make a dime, okay? It's hard to remember this. If you've got to have a way to remember it, okay? So how do we overcome the deficiencies of working memory? How do we remember things more? One is called chunking, okay? Here, I'll show you chunking. Okay, come back to me. I'm going to give you some numbers, and you repeat them after me. Okay, ready? Let me write them down. Don't come up here. Don't show it. Okay, ready? I'm going to say them and you repeat them after me. Just listen. 6, 1, 7, 2, 8, 3, 4, 9, 8, 6. Go ahead. Let's hear. Push them down. Push them down. Go ahead.
6, 1, 7, 2.
Did you write it down?
No.
Who can do it? You get to about 5. That's right, 5, 6, 7. Okay, ready? I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again and everyone try to do it. Ready? I want to give a different set of numbers. 6, 1, 7, 5, 8, 3, 4, 7, 8, 6. Everyone.
6, 1, 7, 5, 8, 3, 4, 7, 8, 6.
Who did it? How'd you do it?
I wrote it down when you were saying.
Oh, you wrote it down, you cheater. Okay. How many people couldn't do it? Nobody, right? Let's do it again, and after I do it again, turn it into a telephone number. Pretend it's a telephone number. By the way, it's 10 digits, too many to remember. Turn it into a telephone number. Ready? Just listen. 617583478 Go ahead.
617583478
Easy, right? What you did is you took 10 numbers, let's go back to the PowerPoint, and you made 3 chunks. It helps deal with the problem of limited capacity by combining smaller units into larger units. By the way, you all know, here, let's go to that your Social Security number is like this. Oops, right? First 3, then 2, then 4. Everyone says it like that, right? That's what they do it on the card. They did it on the card because even back in the 1930s, when they first had this out, people knew about excuse me, knew about this. Yeah, go ahead.
Has that been proven though that that's effective for everybody? Because that didn't help for me to do the chunking. But if you had said it to us, if you had done the chunking method, I think that would have helped me a lot better because you just like repeated it straight through without any pauses.
Right. You're going to have to do it. Look, she said 2 important things. First of all, she said 3 important things. First of all, if you want to remember some things work for some people and some for others, okay? In the end, you have to be aware of the strategies that work for you and not push your strategies down a kid's throat, okay? Number 2, you have to practice some of these things. But maybe even more important, number 3, you said if you had said it in chunks, if you had said 617-583-4786, that's probably somebody's phone number. I think that's a Massachusetts area code, right? Then it would have been easier. So you have to teach it in a way that makes it easier. You want kids to remember things, okay? If you want them to remember things like that. Okay, and so here, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Examples of chunking are telephone numbers, Social Security numbers, letter strings, okay? Before we do this, let me say that there are lots of ways that we can, come back to me, there are lots of ways that we can get kids to remember. For instance, it's much easier to remember something if you sing it than if you say it. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. Most of you can remember words. Remember, if you've ever tried to memorize a poem, it's ghastly. But you know words to hundreds of songs, right? Right? And every once in a while, somebody will write songs to poems or things you want to remember. Like in Ecclesiastes, everything there is a season, a time for this, a time for that. Well, there's a song, to everything turn, 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 there is a season. A time to this and a time to that, a time. Well, I don't remember, but when I had to remember it, right, I had to remember it. I was taking a Bible study course. I sang the song, right? No, I forgot it. Okay, but, okay. There's another way to overcome the deficiencies of short-term memory. Let's go back here, and we'll just see this. And that's called automaticity. Okay? I'm going to give you an example of automaticity. I'm going to go out here. I'm now going to come back to me. I'm now going to give you an example, a demonstration of what happened the first time you're driving in a car and you hit the brakes. You're driving along and you go, right? Jerking. That's how you stop. Okay. Who knows what you do now so that you don't get that jerk? If you're a driver ed teacher or if you know how many people are aware of what you do so that you don't get that jerk when you stop? Who knows what you do?
You could tend.
Who knows? If you think that your answer is you brake very slowly, you're wrong. Because most of you can get a pretty stop short and still not get that jerk. Anybody else got another one? You know?
Well, what I do is I press, you feather the brake, and then right before you're about to stop, you kind of release on it. Like you give it some gas, and I don't know.
How do you know?
That's what my mom taught me.
That's exactly right. Somebody must have told you that, modeled it for you. At the last second, you let up ever so slightly on the brake and then push it down again. Who has no idea that you were doing that? Most of you had no idea that you were doing that, right? You had no idea. I'll show you one more. We got a minute. As long as I'm picking on Shiva. Come over here. Okay? I saw she was wearing shoes. Okay, go like this. And go like this. Put your hands out. Okay. Now tell me what you have to do to tie a shoe. I'm not letting her use her fingers. First, you don't look. Go ahead. I'm waiting. First, you.
I can do it without my hands.
Right. Okay. If I gave her 20 minutes, she could say, well, first you cross the laces, and then you. It's just automatic. She doesn't think about it. So they talk about automaticity, and automaticity is, okay, here we go. It helps deal with the problem of limited duration by making some mental operations so automatic they can be performed with little or no conscious effort. Okay? So, for instance, braking the car. Most of you remember when you were first driving, come back to me, you say, look at the road. Wait, look at the rearview mirror. Look at the side view mirror. Look at the speedometer. Look at it. Drove you nuts. How can I do 6 things at once? Now it's automatic. You just do it all. Okay, next time we come, we'll talk about the other memories of information processing theory.